Hi children, good afternoon, one and all. I welcome you all to today's video class. In today's video class, I am going to teach you the second poem, That Kite. Do you know who has written this poem? Harry Byrne. He wrote this poem. Actually, this poem is consisting of 24 lines. This poem, The Kite, is consisting of 24 lines. This poem is about kite. All of you know all of you know very well that kite is a plaything, is an object which is made to fly in the sky. Okay, fine. Before to begin the poem, let me give you some facts, some information about the kite. Then it will be so interesting to you to understand the poem well. Okay, fine. What's kite? Kite is an object. Kite is an object. It is a plaything. Usually, children like to play with it. See, flying kite, really flying kite in the sky is a good source of happiness. Good source of happiness. So, kite is a plaything which is made of paper. So, children like to play with it. It is made to fly in the sky. Really, it is a source of happiness and joy. Okay, second, how it is made? This kite is usually made out of paper. Sometimes colored papers are also used to make this kite. Usually kite is made out of paper. We can use colored papers also to make this kite. And we also use soft or tender sticks with the paper to shape it, to make the shape of a kite. Once it is finished, then it is attached with a long tail. It is also attached with a long string. Okay, fine. These two things only will help the kite to fly in the sky. Okay, fine. Then next, how does it fly? When there is a gust of wind, when the wind starts to blow, the children who wants to fly the kite, just let it free in the sky. Let it free in the sky. Then it starts to float, and due to the current and force of the wind, slowly it starts to rise up. When it starts to rise up, the person who is handling the kite releases the string slowly. Then it goes up and up in the air, and then it starts to fly so fine in the sky. So how does it fly? When the wind starts to flow, kites are made to fly high in the sky or the open space. The person handling the kite, let it flows and floods in the sky, flows and floats in the sky. So when the wind blows, slowly the kite starts to rise up and up, then it starts to float on the air, Then the person has to release the string slowly. Okay, fine. Then, where does it fly? Usually in the open space, hilltop, rooftops, and seashore, river banks. In all these places, you can get a good gust of wind. In all these places, the air blows, or the moving air, that's called wind, blows so fast with good speed. So these are all the nice places, right places for to fly a kite. Okay, fine. Then who does like to fly kite? Everyone. If you ask this question, what answer will you get? Everyone likes to fly kite in the sky. Right from the children, even the adolescent, even the adult, even your parents who like to fly a kite in the air because it is a source of happiness and joy. Okay, fine, children. So, kite is a play object. It is made out of paper. Sometimes we may use colored papers with soft string to make this kite. Okay, so tender sticks are used to make this kite. Okay, fine. Then, where it is used to fly, actually in the open space, hilltop, rooftop, and seashore and river banks, we used to fly kite in all these places. Usually, kite starts to fly and float on the air. Okay, fine. Next, let me explain the poem, one line, one line. And actually this poem is consisting of 24 lines. This poem is a poem of 24 lines. Let me give you the brief description of the poem. To begin with this poem, the poet starts with the line. The poet starts with the line, how bright on the blue. The first line of this poem is, how bright on the blue. Here, the word blue stands for the color of the sky. How bright on the blue. Here, the poem starts with the line that the kite looks so bright. The kite looks so bright when it flies high in the sky. So a kite looks so bright in you also when it flies so high in the air. Okay, fine. So how bright? Here on the blue, the word blue stands. Actually, it stands for the color of the sky. Normally, if you look at the sky, see, you can see blue sky. Generally, it is described as blue sky. It is also called a cloudless sky. When there is no cloud in the sky looks blue only. When there is no cloud in the sky looks bluish. So the poem starts with the line that the kite looks so bright when it starts to fly in the cloudless sky. When it starts to fly in the cloudless sky. Second line is the kite when it's new. Here the poet says, when the kite starts to fly, when the kite starts to fly in the sky, when the kite starts to fly high in the sky, in the air, when it starts to float on the air, it looks bright as well as new. It looks so new. It looks so bright. So here the first two lines of the poem, the poet says, when you fly a kite in the sky so high in the open air, when the wind starts to blow, then the kite starts to rise up slowly and it starts to fly in the sky so beautifully. If you observe how it flies in the sky, really it is very interesting. The poet says that in the blue sky, the flying of the kite is an exciting sight. It is an exciting sight. It looks so bright. In the blue sky, in the cloudless sky, the flying kite looks so bright and new. The flying kite looks so bright and new. I will show you the picture. See this picture. This is how nice it is to see a flying kite in the sky. So it's a kite. It is made of colored papers with soft sticks. Okay, once if it is finished, then it is attached with a long tail. Once if you finish the frame of the kite, then it is attached with a long tail. It is also attached with a long string. This tail and string only will help the kite to fly high in the sky. Okay, so this is a picture. See this picture also. Here, many like to fly kite in the sky. It's a seashore. Actually, this picture is taken on the seashore. Usually, during the spring season, people like to go to the seashore. There, they like to fly many kites in the open air. Children like to see, children like to observe how these kites are flying in the sky. Really it is worth seeing. Really it is worth seeing. It is a source of happiness and joy. Okay children, so in the first two lines, the poet says that when a kite is flying high in the sky, in the open air, in the cloudless sky, it looks so bright and new. It looks so bright and new. Okay, come to the third line. With a dive and dip. Normally, when the kite is flying in the sky, it is not always floating or flying at the same height. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. If there is no force in the wind, then what happens to the kite? It just comes down. That is the downward movement of the kite. But the poet describes the downward movement of the kite as dive and dip. Dive means, see, plunge into the water. He dives into the water means he comes down. He just plunges into the water. In the same manner, when the kite is flying in the sky, when the speed of the wind starts to reduce, then slowly it comes down. It looks like plunging into the water. It looks like it has been doing diving. It makes it dive. The kite makes it dive. And it comes down to some extent. Okay, so the downward movement of the kite here is described by the poet with the phrase dive and dip. So the third line the poet says, with the dive and dip, it stands for the downward movement of the kite. When the wind loses its speed, when the wind becomes weak, then what happens? The kite comes downward. See, it is flying like this, then slowly it starts to travel towards the earth. So the downward movement of the kite is here described by the poet. It is diving. So the kite makes a dive and it starts to dip. When a person dives into the water, he goes towards the floor. He goes towards the bottom. That's called a dip. In the same way, it's an open air, it's a sky. The kite is flying like this. When the air or the wind becomes weak, it just starts to come down and it has a dip in the air for some time. Then again what happens? It snaps its tail. Again the wind starts to blow. The wind becomes strong. The wind gets its speed. Now slowly the kite starts to fly. Now slowly the kite starts to rises up and up in the air. It starts to fly so high in the sky. Slowly it increases its height. It starts to goes up and up because the wind starts to blow. The wind becomes so strong. When it starts to high up, what happens? See, the tail of the kite starts to move so fast. It flutters, it waves. The tail of the kite just starts to flow so fast. So, how see, the kite does not stay straight. It sways like the waves. See, the tail starts to sway like this. Sway means wave, W-A-D, wave or sway like this. At the time, it produces a sound. That's important. So, it produces some good sound. When the wind again starts to blow, it starts to rise up. Slowly it goes up. At the time that see the tail of the kite starts to sway like this, starts to wave like this, it produces some sound. The up and down movement of the tail, because it is so long, just starts to flutter, F-L-U-T-T, flutter. It starts to move in such a way. Wave. Okay. So when it moves in such a way, when it sways, S-W-A-Y-S, when it sways like this, shall write the spelling on the board. When it sways, then it produces some sound. So it snaps its tail. The phrase has been used by the poet. Snaps means breaks suddenly and completely with a cracking sound. A cracking sound has been produced by the tail of the kite. When it fluctuates, when it sways, when it waves, in that strong wind, it produces some cracking sound. So then, after producing such sound, then it slowly starts to rise up and up. It starts to fly so high in the sky. Then soars like a ship. How it moves up, the upward movement here, the upward movement of the kite is compared to the movement of a ship that sails on the surface of the water. So here, the poet compares the way sailing. Actually, sail is the action of sailing on the surface of the water. At the same time, when over the tides, the ship starts to float on the wind. Normally, the movement of the kite here is compared to the movement of the ship on the surface of the water. If you notice the movement of the ship on the surface of the water, it's just ship starts to travel on the surface of the water with the help of the sail. Sail is a device which is attached with the mast of the ship. Mast. It is attached with the mast of the ship. It just stops the force of the wind. With the force, it helps the vessel or the ship to move so fast to the front. So when there is a high tide, the ship just starts to rise up in its height. Then when the wind blows so strong and when huge tides rises, then the ship also rises in its height. It goes up. Then when the wind becomes weak and there is no tide, then the ship comes down. Then it just starts to float on the surface of the water. This movement, upside down movement, is called sail of the ship. Ship sails on the surface of the water in this way only, and ship normally moves in such a way only. So sail helps a ship to move smoothly. It just blocks the air, and it propels the air. It helps a ship to move smoothly on the surface of the water. Now, the ups and downs movement of the kite is here compared with the ups and downs movement of the ship. I hope you can follow me, children. Yeah. Pay good attention. Listen to me very carefully. Here the good simile has been made by the poet. When the ship starts to float on the surface of the water, sometimes there may be strong wind. At the time, huge tides are formed. When huge tides came, or when huge tides are formed by the strong wind, then the ship starts to just rise up. Because the tides makes the ship to rise up on the surface of the water. Then when the wind becomes weak, the tides has lost its strength, then the ship slowly comes down and then it starts to float on the surface of the water. So the upward and downward movement of the ship like this is compared to the upward and downward movement of the kite. So when the kite starts to fly, float on the air, slowly it starts to rise up and up. When the strong wind starts to blow. So the force of the wind takes the kite up and up. Suddenly, when the wind becomes weak, then what happens? The kite slowly comes down. Slowly it comes down. So you cannot expect that a kite flies at the same height in the sky. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. So when it goes down, again strong wind comes, which it goes up. At that time, see the long tail attached with the kite moves, flutters. and sways, waves here and there in the strong wind. At the time it produces sound. For example, see children, see this, if I sway, can you hear the sound? In the same way, the tail of the kite produces some sound when it sways, waves, flutters here and there in the strong wind. So, in the first stanza, the poet says, let me read out the first stanza, how bright on the blue. So, the cloudless sky, there is no cloud. Then the sky looks so bluish, the blue sky. When the kite starts to fly so high in the sky, it looks so bright. It also looks so new. So the poet says, the kite looks so bright and new. It flies so high in the sky. When the wind is strong or when the wind starts to blow continuously, and at the time the person who is handling the kite has to release the string slowly. So it pulls the string and then it starts to rise slowly, starts to rise up and up in the air. When the wind becomes weak, then it slowly comes down. The downward movement of the kite is called dive and tip. Dive and tip. It's an action, downward movement. It comes down, then it tips to some extent, tips for some distance in the air. Again, when the wind starts to blow, then it goes up. This upward and downward movement of the kite is here compared to the upward and downward movement of the ship. The sail which is attached with the mast of the ship helps the ship to rise up. It stops and blocks the air and it gives the air and it directs the air towards the ship, so it propels the ship to move so fast in the front with the help of the force of the air. So the sail attached with the mast of the ship only helps. In the same way, the wind only decides the height of the flight, the height of the kite. If the wind is so strong, the wind is so forceful, then the kite starts to fly high in the sky. If the wind becomes weak, then it comes down. So, here what the poet wants to say, generally the kite does not stay straight. Generally the kite does not stay straight. It sways like waves. It sways here and there like waves. It also doesn't fly at the same height. It also doesn't fly at the same height. Sometimes it flies high, and occasionally it comes down. But then with the help of the tails, it can soar even higher. So what does the poet here want to say? Tail helps the kite. See, tails helps. See the tails of the kite. Tails helps the kite soar high. Tails help the kite soar high. Okay, like sails of the ship. How it helps the ship to move so smoothly on the surface of the water or the tides. Okay, fine. Then the first paragraph, the poet says, a kite is made to fly in the sky with the force of the wind. When the wind starts to blow with good speed or with good force, the kite starts to fly. It soars up and up. But when the wind becomes weak or when the wind gets losses its force, speed, then it comes down. So for some time it goes up and occasionally it comes down. But again, when the wind starts to flow, it goes up. In the same way, that's called upward and downward movement of the kite. Here the poet compares the upward and downward movement of the kite with the upward and downward movement of a ship which is sailing on the tides. When the wind starts to blow, when the storm wind starts to blow, it creates tides, good tides. So when the tides rises up, it also raises the height of the ship. Then the ship starts to rise up and it starts to float on the high tides. When the wind becomes weak, then it comes down and then it just moves or floats or sails on the surface of the water. Okay, second stanza. As over tides of wind it rides. Here the poet says, I like the lines on the board. See, first stanza explains like this. In the second stanza, as over tides of wind it rides. Of wind it rides. Okay, over tides. How a ship moves? A ship moves on a ship ride, a ship sail on the tide, over the tides sometimes, and then wind is the same way of the wind the kite rides. So tide, wind. Okay, here the poet compares the tides of the ocean with the wind of the sky. And next the poet compares the vessel, the ship, with the kite. And the movement of the ship on the tides or on the surface of the water is compared to the movement of the kite on the surface of or in the sky, blue sky. Okay, right. Then climbs to the crust. Here the poet says the wind, when the wind becomes so strong, it starts to rise up and up. So the kite looks like a ship. Okay, then as the wind pushes the ship, it sways and moves through the water. Similarly, the kite climbs higher as the wind blows. Then here the wind falls, the string of the kite gets looses, so it comes down. That is the comparison which has been made by the poet with the ship. See, as over tides of wind rides, climbs to the crust of a guest and pulls. What does it mean of a guest and pulls? Why the poet says like this? Why the poet uses these phrases here? See, it climbs the crust. Crust here stands for the highest point. When the wind is in favor to the kite, then it slowly rises up and up. Then it reaches the highest summit or the highest point in the sky. Then the kite reaches the highest point in the sky. With the help of the upward movement of the wind, how a ship just rises up when a forceful tide or when the high tide comes, then the ship rises up. The same way, when a strong wind blows, see, the kite starts to rises up in the sky. So here the poet says it climbs to the crust. Climbs to the crust. Here crust stands for the highest point. So due to the strong wind, the kite rises up and it reaches the highest summit in the sky. Highest point. So crust stands for high point. See, the highest point. Then what happens? Of a gust and pulls. Of a gust means a sudden strong wind. So a wind a sudden and strong wind starts to raises slowly the height of the kite, then it just pulls the string also from the road. That's important. So when it starts to fly so high and high due to the strong wind, when the sea kite starts to flow, when the kite starts to rises high and high, then slowly it pulls the string also from its coil. So when the person who is handling the kite slowly releases the string, then it slowly starts to rise up and up. This is upward movement of the kite. Okay. I hope you can follow me, children. I hope you can follow me and pay good attention and listen to me carefully and see whenever I am giving you the meaning for the hard words, keep it in your mind. Okay. Otherwise, you can do one thing. You can note it down in the classroom. See, climbs to the crest. The kite rises slowly up and reaches the highest summit means the height. It goes so high in the sky. It goes so high in the sky. When it starts to move up, it slowly pulls the string. Suppose if the person who is handling the kite holds the string strongly, means it cannot move so fast. It cannot goes up in the sky. Therefore, the person who is handling the kite has to release it slowly. Then it starts to rises up high and high in the sky. So the poet says, gust and pulls. It is the meaning of the gust and pull stands for gust and pulls. See, gust and then pulls. Gust, sudden movement of the wind. Gust from the wind. Strong wind. The sudden strong wind. When it starts to blow, it makes the kite to rose. It makes the kite to rises up and up. Okay. So it starts to soar up in the sky. When it starts to soar up in the sky, it slowly pulls the string. The person who is hanging the kite slowly releases the string. Then it goes up and up in the sky. Then seems to rest and wind falls. Then seems to rest. See, the letters go like this. Then seems to rest. Then seems to rest as wind falls. As wind falls. Here what happens? As I told you, in the beginning of this poem, the kite does not fly in the same height in the sky. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it comes down. When the wind becomes, see here, the wind falls. It means when the wind becomes weak, when the wind loses its strength, then what happens? The upward movement, the propelling force is not there. Therefore, the kite slowly comes down. So, the poet says very beautifully, when the wind drops, falls means drops. When the wind drops, what happens to the kite? The kite slips into the rest mode. At that time, see, without rising height, so it just starts to float in the same height. Now the poet says that it takes some rest. See to take rest. How nicely he describes every movement of the kite. When it floats at the same height, when it starts to float on the same height of the air, because the air becomes weak, the wind becomes weak, when the wind drops, it comes down and it just starts, it reaches some height and it starts to rest at the same height. It rests on the same height. that movement, that position of the kite is called by the poet as resting point, resting mode. Now the poet says that kite takes rest for some time. So as over tides of windy rides climbs to the crest of a gusted pulse that seems to rest as window falls. Here the poet says it rises up just like a ship when the wind becomes strong. Then when the wind becomes weak or when the wind drops, it comes down. It reaches the highest point. It starts to ride. See, the kite starts to fly over the sky. The kite starts to fly over the tides, over the hilltop, over the rooftop, over the tree top. Okay, so the kite starts to fly over the hilltop, over the rooftop, over the tides, over the tree top. So it was flying so high in the sky. But when the wind falls, or when the wind becomes weak, or when the wind drops, it comes down. But to some, see, it just then it starts to take rest. It starts to stay at some height. It starts to stay at some height in the air. So now the poet says that movement of the kite, it has a rest mode. It sits in a rest mode. As the wind falls, what happens? The string of the kite also gets loosened. When the wind falls, the string of the kite gets loosened. So what happens? They will wind the string back and it will come again, run with it until there is another breeze here, and run until the wind is blocked. So when the string goes slack here, when the wind falls or when the wind drops, see, the kite just comes down. Then what happens? The person who is handling the kite just starts to roll back the string because it comes down. So he starts to roll back. See, the string of the kite gets loose. So they will wind. Wind means just starts to pull down. The just start to coil, just starts to wind. The string slowly. Then if he does like this, what happens? The kite comes slowly down. Okay, after reaching some height, it just starts to float on the same height. It was waiting. The person who is handling the kite is also waiting for another wind. So when string goes slack means when the wind gets loose. Because when the kite comes down, then the string attached with it becomes slack. Therefore, the person who is handling the kite starts to pull down and he starts to, what happens? He starts to wind the string slowly and back and so what happens? When he starts to wind the string back, then it comes down. But the kite is waiting for another wind. So you wind it back and run until a new breeze blows. It has been floating in the same place. And see, you wind it back, rolls it back. So slowly it starts to coil down, or slowly it starts to pull down, or slowly it starts to wind the string back. Okay, so it starts to float at the same height, but it starts to run until a new breeze blows. Once the breeze starts, what happens? Then the kite will be blown back in the sky. It starts to rise up in the sky. So the colorful kite will once again be soaring beautifully in the blue sky. So, and run until a new breeze blows and wings fill and up it goes. Once again the wind starts to blow and again if the strong wind comes, then what happens? The beautiful, the colorful kite again starts to rise up slowly in the air. And then the person who is handling releases, slowly he releases the string. Then the kite slowly starts to rise up and up in the sky. Okay, once the breeze starts, the kite will be blown back. The kite will again starts to rise up in the sky. So the colorful kite will once again be soaring. Means rising up and up beautifully in the blue sky. Okay, it goes up and up. How bright on the blue is a kite when it is blue. Here in the next lines, the poet says, a new breeze and its wings fill. See the line, and its wings fill. And its wings fill. The line says like this, and its wings fill, and up it goes. And up it goes. So in this line, these two lines, the poet says, again when a new breeze starts to blow, or when a strong wind starts to blow, see the kite slowly rises up and up. It reaches a new height. Okay, so it wings fill and up it goes. It starts to go up and up. How bright! It's so nice to see again. How bright! The poet says, how bright on the blue. How bright on the blue. How bright on the blue is a kite. It's a kite when it's new. So here in these two lines, what does the poet want to say? So it looks so bright, it looks so new on the blue sky. Again it starts to rise up in the sky. Okay, fine. And it's a kite when it is new. So when again it starts to fly so high in the sky, when it starts to soar up and up in the sky, it looks so beautiful. It looks so nice. It looks so new. It looks so bright in the blue sky. Then the last four lines, what the poet says, let me write all those lines on the board and I will explain you the last four lines. See, the poet pitiably describe the kite. What happens to the kite? But a rational thing. But see, but a rational thing. What happens to the kite when it flies so majestically, so high in the sky? You never will see. You never will see. You never will see when it flaps on the string. When it flaps on a string. When it flaps on a string in the top of the tree. The top of the tree. Okay. See, but all of a sudden, what happens? But all of a sudden, when the string is cut off, the kite will draw itself on it. See, torn and torn. You never will see. See, it moves along the wind. When the wind falls, the kite takes rest on the ground. See, the kite has to come back to the ground. It has to wait for the wind to blow up. All these movements were beautifully described by the poet. But now, the poet says that the person who handles the kite has to wait for again the wind to blow. The same kite, which looks bright in the sky, when it is new, appears ugly now. What happens? All of a sudden, when the string which is attached with the kite is cut off. Then see like this, the downward movement so it comes so fast and fell on the top branch of the tree. So gradually down. When the kite fell on the top of the branch of the tree, when the string attached with it is cut off, then it becomes so taut. So what happens is, now it looks dirty and unattractive. The same kite which looks bright in the sky, when now it appears ugly because it is torn out. So actually means torn out. When it falls on the top branch of a tree, it becomes torn out. When the string cuts off, see, suppose this kite, when the string attached, when it cuts off, just it comes and fell. See, this kite, it flies so high. When the string attached, when it cuts off, then it comes down so fast and it just fell on the top branch of the tree. Then it has torn out. Now it looks so, how it looks like now. So once it looks so bright, now it appears so ugly. See, you never will see such a torn out kite. So it appears ugly when it is torn out. It looks dirty and unattractive. After it gets trapped in the branches of the tree, so it will trap. I will write such phrase on the board. It will trap on the branch of the tree. It trapped on the branch. So it will trap on the branch of the tree. So when the string attached with it cuts off, then it comes down and it fell on the top branch of the tree. It was torn out. Okay, so now it appears very ugly. It looks so dirty and unattractive after it gets trapped on the branches of the tree. Okay, so the last line, the point says you never will see such things. When it flaps on a string in the top of a tree. So when it comes so fast down and it falls on the top branch of the tree, top branch flaps, it comes down and just fell on the top branch of the tree. At the last, what the poet says, the height and the fate of the kite is decided by the wind. The fate of the kite. See, the fate of the movement of the kite depends upon the wind. So as a result, the kite will get torn, and the kite is, because it is made of paper only. The kite is made of paper, therefore when it falls so forcefully on the top branch of the tree, it will get torn because it is made of paper. Okay, now let me sum up the both children. So kite is a playful object. Everyone likes to play kite in the sky, on the rooftop, on the hilltop, on the seashore, on the river bank. You can see the people's flying kite, the colorful kites. Kites are made of paper, and then it is attached with the colorful papers with soft sticks are used to make the kite. Once the frame is made out, then it is attached with the string with a long tail also. People like to fly kite in the open air. So when the wind is strong, it starts to fly so high. It's so nice to look at. Here the poet compares the gentle movement of the kite with the movement of the ship. When the ship starts to sail on the surface of the water, when there is a favorable wind, when the wind is so favourable to the ship, the sail which is attached with the mast of the ship helps it to float so smoothly. When there is a high tide, then it slowly the ship rises up on the surface of the water. Then the ship just moves up. When there is a high tide, dashes against the ship. Then when the wind becomes weak, then it just comes down and it starts to float on the surface of the water. In the same manner, when the wind, strong wind blows, then the kite starts to rises up and up. At the time, the person who is handling the kite slowly releases, it pulls the string from its coil and rises up and up. But you cannot expect that a kite is flying on the same height always. Sometimes when the wind becomes weak, it just comes down. But here the point says it reaches to some extent, then there it starts to float. That is called the resting point, resting mode. So when the kite just starts to come down, then the person who is handling just starts to coil down, just starts to coil down or will wind the string back, then it comes down. Again when a new wind starts to blow, then it goes up. So the upward and downward movement of this kite is very beautifully described by the poet, and he also compares the upward and downward movement of the kite with the upward and downward movement of the ship which is sailing on the surface of the water. Finally, what happens? A great tragedy. So sometimes it may happen, see the string, when the kite starts to fly so high and when the wind is so strong, then the string attached with the kite sometimes may cut off, maybe cut off. At that time what happens? See, then the kite comes so fast towards the earth and it just falls on the branches of the tree. As it was made of paper, it will turn out. So it gets damaged. Then now it looks so awkward. So it is not so beautiful anymore to look at. So it has lost its brightness. Now it is not looking so bright. It appears ugly when it is torn out. It looks so dirty and unattractive. So the last line the poet says, the fate of the kite is decided by wind. Okay, how the fate of the ship is decided by the wind and tide. Okay, children, so go through the lines of the poem once again. Slowly you read out first time, then see loudly you read out the second time. Then you know you can how to pronounce the words. You can understand how to pronounce the words. Okay, so let me read out the entire poem. The kite, how bright and blue is a kite when it's new, with a dive and a dip. It snaps its tail, then soars like a ship with only a sail. As over tides of wind it rides, climbs to the crest of a gust and pulls, then seems to rest as wind falls. When stick goes slack, when string goes slack, you wind it back and runs until a new breeze blows and its wings fill and up it goes. How bright and the blue is a kite when it's new, but a rational thing you never will see when it flaps on a string, the top of a tree. Okay, children. So have a glance and read once again the lines of the poem, and I hope all of you can understand the poem well. Even then, if you have any doubts, just walk it, and then it will be followed by the classwork regularly. You have to copy the classwork in your classwork note. Okay, children. Thank you. Have a nice day.